Do your kids hate reading? Wouldn't you love it if they loved reading? Or better yet, what if you knew how to teach them from the start to love reading? In today's episode, we talk about the foundations that give the confidence and skills needed to build strong reading early on. This episode is targeted towards parents of struggling readers and early readers. You will have amazing insights into what the connection is between reading and speaking, and we will talk about the foundational threads that connect them both, which means being strong in both strategies builds both skills. If you know of a parent or teacher who may benefit from these research-based interventions, strategies, and insights, please share this episode. Also, I would be delighted if you follow, share, and subscribe and leave a review. Does your child have a speech-language delay and you really want them to talk? Do difficult behaviors derail home life and you know the frustration is a communication struggle? Does your child see a speech therapist and you wonder, what do they do and how can I help? If these or similar questions are in your mind, this podcast is for you. Hello, my name is Dinalynn Rosenbusch. I am a speech-language pathologist that has worked with children from birth to 21 for 3 decades. And in my classrooms, I see you wanting to connect with the heart of your child, but their speech and language skills create a barrier. So if you have a kiddo that has difficult behaviors, needs to expand their language or learn to say speech sounds, and maybe even receives speech therapy, stay tuned, because in this podcast, you will learn how to use your daily life as a tool to communication practice and how to do that practice. You will become confident knowing you are making the difference you want to make. And you will hear success stories of parents who have navigated these struggles already. We'll do this all while focusing on building deep, meaningful connection and confidence in your kiddo. So grab a cup of coffee along with a notebook and pen. It's time to speak in the way your child's brain understands. And that is the language of play. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to begin with a review. This review is from C2 the Lewis, who writes, a must-listen podcast for parents. The Language of Play is such a powerful podcast, and every parent should take a listen. As a mother of 3 children, and every stage of life, I appreciate the encouragement and education and support that her guests bring to the table. Her episodes are interesting, and her guests are full of knowledge that make you feel like you're not alone as a parent. A must-listen for everyone with children. Thank you, C2 the Lewis. I am so glad you have been enjoying the guest episodes. This week, I'd like to recognize Oman, Finland, and the United Kingdom as listeners. Thank you. The Language of Play was among your top parenting podcasts today, the day I record, and this one is actually being recorded on release day. Normally, I like to do it a day or so before, but this one is recorded on release day. Anyway, it's so fun to see how many countries are picking up this information and being supported by it. I am so honored. The next thing was the recent webinar, Beyond Obedience, Unveiling the Power of Listening in Kids, was a success. And if you missed it and you would like the replay, you can email me at hello@thelanguageofplay.com and send me the word replay, and I will be so glad to send you it. It is nearly complete, but you know how it is. Life fills up, especially now at the beginning of the school year, and there are many things to do, and everything is limping along as well as possible. I'm hoping that this replay is completely done in just a few more days. Now I have one more announcement, and that is that now I have 2 sponsors. Yay! The Center for Play and Exploration is the first one. Getting unstuck, fighting burnout, and recovering delight is possible even with little ones. The Center for Play and Exploration helps adults restore the childlike wonder we once had. As parents, we get so busy keeping up with life that we lose spontaneity and joy. But what if you could change how you feel just by changing how you think? That's one way you'll benefit from contacting the Center for Play and Exploration. Use the link in the show notes and mention the language of play for a 20% discount. Also, if you're looking for an engaging speaker for your event, Dave, the founder of the center, is excellent. My second sponsor is Lightning Admin VA. You've got a lot on your plate: speech therapy appointments, home practice, and all the daily mom stuff. And if you also run a business, that mental load can feel even heavier. That's why I want to tell you about Cindy at lightningadminva.com. She's a virtual assistant who handles the admin side of your business so you can focus on your kids and keep your business running smoothly. See the description below this episode or email Cindy at lightningadminva.com. Thank you to both Dave and Cindy for being fabulous sponsors. Now let's get into today's episode. Hello, listeners. Welcome today to this interview with Daniela Feldhausen. She realized that her passion is teaching kids to read, and she founded Kids Up Reading Tutors. With a team of specialists to overcome dyslexia, dysgraphia, and other reading challenges, struggling readers turn from "I hate reading" to "I love reading." Daniela, I love that. And listeners, I'll have the rest of her bio in the show notes. But thank you for being here, Daniela. I am so glad that we're going to talk about this topic. It is a topic that is so important for our families, for kids, for parents. It is also a topic that is really stressful. So thank you for being here. This is really important.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm super happy to be here and super happy to be talking to you. There's a huge amount of overlap between the kids who, when they're young, are having trouble with speech and who, when they're a little bit older, are having trouble with reading. So I think it's really great collaboration here between the speech language and between the reading and spelling. So really looking forward to this conversation.
You're absolutely right. So let's get started right into it. And, well, I should back up. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this, because you were an attorney in DC. How did you get into this?
Right.
What was the catalyst for wanting to teach reading?
You know, it actually started fairly early on when my oldest, who's now I think 28, when he was 4, I was looking at the local public schools and trying to decide if I wanted to put him there. And so I decided to go volunteer in a local public school, and they had me working with kids who were struggling with reading. And I think that's where it all started. Then one of my kids, it turned out, had trouble reading. And it was just sort of a constant theme. Like whenever I had extra time, I would go volunteer at a local public school. And kind of a long story short, one day I woke up and I realized, you know what? This is really what I want to do. And I went back to school, got a master's degree in special ed, did a bunch of training on how to teach dyslexic kids to read, totally, upended my life. And here we are now, and I've got this little company, Kids Up Reading Tutors. We are 20 tutors working with almost 70 kids across the United States right now, helping them become fluent readers and good spellers. And I love it. Absolutely love what I do.
That is so heartwarming and so wonderful. I'm really glad to hear that. It's fun to get to know you as an individual, not just as a specialist. But this is really cool. Thank you for doing that. And I know that upending your life and going back to school, getting a degree was no small feat.
It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it.
That's great. All right, let's jump into the connection. What do you see as the big connection between the reading, spelling, writing, and the speaking, listening, and language skills?
Oh, they're so integrated. I mean,
Yeah.
they're almost, I'm not going to say that they're all one and the same, but oh my gosh, you need to have strong speaking and listening skills in order to become a good reader and speller. You need to really, truly, deeply understand that words are made up of individual sounds and that you can put sounds together in different combinations to get different words. That's what we call phonological skills in my part of the world.
Hmm.
And with those really strong, or you need to have really strong phonological skills in order to then be able to understand how a reading and writing system works, and then to learn all of those phonics patterns that you need to know in order to be a good reader and a good speller. So for me, I was going to say it starts with phonological skills, but that's not even right. It starts with strong oral language skills. You have to have strong phonological skills, and then you have to build the phonics on top of that. All of this and more is really important to becoming a good reader and a good speller.
Love that.
But
So now I'm going to say, let's take that back even a little bit further because
mhm,
good oral skills start with good listening skills and good exposure to good language.
yeah,
Hmm.
yep.
Yeah. So when you have a struggling reader or an early reader coming into your program, where do you actually begin? Do they typically already have speech therapy or do they just show an absence of some of these skills?
So I'm going to say about half of the kids we work with have a formal diagnosis of one sort or another. Dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD is super common. A lot of our kids are in speech language therapy, maybe for articulation issues, maybe for expressive receptive language issues. We have some kids with APD, auditory processing disorder. There's a lot of overlap, as you know,
Hmm.
between kids who, have one of these diagnoses and then might also have a few other diagnoses.
Sure.
So we work with all of these kids. The first thing I'll do, well, the first thing I do is talk to the parents.
Of course.
When I first start talking to the student, what I'm going to do is check their phonological skills and their phonics skills. So
Mhm.
when families come to me, it's because of trouble with reading, and usually trouble with reading can be remedied by working on the child's phonological skills and phonics skills. So the first thing I do is I check very specifically what skills do they have on the phonological side, what are they missing? What skills do they have on the phonics side, and what are they missing? So
Can
it's a
you,
very
for our parents, would you differentiate phonological and phonics? And then we
yes.
also need to, I think, mention phoneme, not, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, phoneme, because I think that that's something that parents might remember me talking about. So we need
Phonemic
to,
skills.
yeah,
Okay.
we need to talk about phonemic, phonological, and phonics and tease those three terms apart.
Okay, absolutely. The phonological and the phonemic piece, I was using phonological skills as the broader term that encompasses phonemic skills. But basically, what we're talking about with phonological skills and phonemic skills, what we're talking about is taking a word and breaking it into smaller chunks. So you could, for example, if you think about how we rhyme words, when we're rhyming, let's say bat, cat, sat, hat. What we're doing is we're separating out that first sound in the word from the vowel and everything that comes after it. So we're breaking it into what we in my world call the onset, that beginning sound, and then the
Mhm.
rhyme, which is the vowel and everything after it. So that is a phonological skill. So you're playing with, or you're manipulating the sounds of the word. You're pulling those sounds apart, but you're doing it in chunks. Once you get to breaking it down into the smallest possible unit, then you're talking about the phonemic skills.
Mhm.
I tend to use the broader term phonological skills as an umbrella term that incorporates the phonemic piece. Just because it's a big long explanation of, what is the difference between these two things. But yes, so both of them are about breaking a word into smaller chunks. And the phonemic piece is about breaking it into the smallest possible chunks, those individual sounds, whereas the phonological could also mean you're breaking it into syllables or you're breaking it into onset rhyme. So the phonological piece is about figuring out the sounds in the word. The phonics piece is something actually totally different. The phonics piece is about the correspondences between the sounds and the letters. We call that phonemes and graphemes in our world, but basically it's the correspondences between the sounds and the letters. So for example, if you see the letter combination EA in a word, it's likely to be an E, like eat. But sometimes that EA is pronounced like head. And sometimes it's pronounced A, like great. So you got multiple correspondences between that EA. It could be an E, an or an A. And that's something that children have to learn. Some kids pick this up by osmosis and you don't really have to teach them much, but many kids need good explicit instruction. And it goes in both directions. You need to teach those phonics patterns in both directions. So yes, for EA, if you see an EA on a piece of paper, you're going to pronounce it E or A. Great. You also need to teach the kids those correspondences going in the other direction. So if you're hearing a particular sound, what are all the different ways you're able to spell that sound?
Ah, yes.
So when kids work with us, we create what we call our vowel chart, and they're writing down on the vowel chart all the different ways they know to spell the different sounds, to spell a long A, for example. So if you want to write a word with a long A sound, it might be just an A at the end of a syllable, in the middle of a word, like bagel. It could be an A magic E or a silent E or a consonant E, whatever you call it, like name or lake. It could be an AI like rain. It could be an AY like play. That AY is only going to appear at the end of a word. It could be an EA like great, and so on and so forth. There are a few other ones. There are a lot of phonics patterns to learn, yeah. And so what we do is we have kids create a vowel chart in which they're keeping track of all the different ways they know to spell all of those various vowel sounds. Because the vowel sounds it's a deep orthography, right? Meaning there are a lot of different of these phonics patterns, as opposed to some other languages where you've got much more of a one-on-one, one-to-one correspondence between the sounds and the letters. We've got a bit more to learn.
Thank you for teasing that out. There's so much jargon within our worlds.
Yeah.
So I want to take just a moment to backpedal a little bit and recap. So if we were to take what you did and you talked about phonological and phonics, phonological meaning the chunks of sounds, and phonics being the writing of the letters, the grapheme, the writing of the letters that represent those sounds.
Yep.
And now if we take that back earlier in age, we talk about phoneme, which is the sound, and the sound changes, and we hear the sound changes. Now I'm going to add another word to that, and that would be morpheme, which would be the meaning change because
Yep.
we've added a sound or a phoneme. So the morphological change is a meaning change. And then a phonemic, I'm going to get myself mixed up with the words. There's a lot of jargon. So then we go to phonemic changes, and that would be the sound change. And then we bump that up to phonological, which is the chunking of sounds. And then we bring it up further in development to phonics, which is the writing of the letter that represents those sounds. How did I do to recap?
Yes, that is great. That is absolutely great. I'll add on another piece, which
Good.
is that the morphological piece, the morphemes,
Mhm.
are super, super important. And you also need to learn those phonics correspondences with those.
Because that
Because
would be prefixes, suffixes, and
prefixes,
changes that way.
suffixes,
Yes.
exactly. And then you have little complications like the way we show past tense in English, that morpheme ed is
Hmm.
how we show past tense. So play and played and spell and spelled, and miss and missed. That ed can have three different pronunciations.
Sure.
It can sound like id, like landed. It can sound like d, like spelled, and it can sound like t, like missed. I missed
Mm.
you. And so that's yet something else that we need to teach our kids. So they can early on when children are spelling, say in first grade, we're very happy if they spell based on the sounds that their mouths are making as they're saying these words. As they become more advanced, we start talking about the morphological bits of our language. And then we have to start teaching them how to use that ed, for example, for the past tense and how it has one spelling, but has three different possible pronunciations. So as kids advance, we
Mhm.
have to start bringing morphology into all of our conversations about reading and spelling, because that morphology, the meanings, those little bits and pieces of words dramatically affect the words.
Of course.
And so we have to know how to read and spell those bits as well.
That's so good. Now, when we are talking here for parents as listeners and we're using a fair amount of jargon, even though we're explaining it, it can be a mouthful or an earful, whatever you want to say. When you're working with the kiddos, what does it look like?
Um, don't tend to use those words as much.
I
So
bet you
I would
don't.
say when we're doing our phonological exercises, we call them word games because
Yes.
that's kind of what they are. At the very early level, it's say baseball. Now say baseball, but don't say base. Or
Hmm.
say umbrella, but don't say. Or say feet, but don't say f. That's where we're getting into that onset rhyme. Or say feet, but instead of f, say Or then later, as they get more and more advanced, you can do things like say clamp. Now say clamp, but don't say ul. Or say clamp, but don't say Or say clamp, but instead of ul, say r. Or say clamp, but instead of say s. So all of those are different levels of these phonological exercises that we do with the kids, and we just call them word games.
Hmm. And it
And
takes a little bit of gymnastics in the mind. It should be
absolutely.
able to do that, to take a sound out and to say the word differently.
Exactly, exactly. And those are those phonological skills that need to be really strong in order for kids to become good readers and good spellers.
Hmm.
So that is super, super important, but it's also a whole lot of fun. And so we generally start our lessons with those exercises, with those word games, and most kids really love them.
Yeah. I know that when I get students that have trouble reading also, I always check the phonological skills. And, hands down, all the time, it seems, those kiddos need to do the games. Like, just like you're saying, that's exactly how I do it too. And we play games that help them hear differently. Then eventually I'll show them the letters. It works better for them to learn by listening, I find, rather than showing them the cue from the letter, because when they are older, they know what letter might represent. So, for example, I had a fifth grader, and when he sees the letter, he gets everything right. But if I take away that visual support, then he can't hear it. And that foundation piece is part of his difficulty with reading.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah. And so the way we do it is that we'll try to do it orally first. And if the child is having trouble playing those games orally,
Hmm.
we'll immediately switch over and start doing it with letters.
Okay, so
And
yeah, that's the
pull
same here
the
as support.
letter.
Then do you
Yeah.
pull it away too?
And then pull it away.
Yeah.
Once they're comfortable doing it with the letters, then we pull away the letters
Yes.
and just have them do it, have them visualize, like think about the different sounds, tell me what the sounds are, show me a finger for each of the different sounds
Yep.
that you hear in that word. So let's say play p, ul, a. So p, ul, a. Now instead of p, give me k. And so I was holding up my fingers, bent down the finger that was representing the P and put it back up to represent the K sound. And now they
Mhm.
can blend it back together and it's clay.
That's
So you
exactly
can,
what I do too.
that's how you do it too. Yeah. Okay, great.
It's interesting to see somebody do it in the exact same way that I will use it with kids. Okay, so how many or how often is it common that the kids that come into your program have also struggled with their speech sound development? One of the things that I often hear is that that's the first thing identified. And then later on, then the dyslexia is figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. Happens all the time. I'm going to say maybe half of the kids we work with, maybe even more, have been seen by a speech language pathologist, should be seen by a speech language pathologist, have a diagnosis, have articulation issues, et cetera, et cetera. So it's at least half of our population. There's a huge overlap between kids with speech language issues and kids with reading spelling issues. They absolutely go hand in hand.
And if 50% are getting speech therapy of some sort, then there's a whole lot more than that that didn't quite qualify but are still struggling with sound
Right.
production.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not that 50% are currently in speech therapy, but maybe are currently in speech therapy or were at one point in time in speech therapy and graduated out of speech therapy. many times for articulation issues, and the articulation issues are solved, but there are still those underlying issues that are then going to affect the reading and the spelling.
Sure.
So it's almost like a continuation of the earlier problem that wasn't quite resolved by only doing the articulation therapy. Now we've got some other things that we need to work on still in the whole realm of speech language.
Sure. Yeah, because it's language based, isn't it? All of the work that you do is a language based.
Absolutely.
What can a parent do at home? This is all very strategic that you're talking about, but
Mhm.
this doesn't mean that it's something that parents would automatically know how to implement.
Sure, sure. I know you work, I think, mostly with younger kids, right? Like, what's your age range? Like,
So
most of the listeners
in
are probably
Okay, so I do work as a speech pathologist
okay.
and I do this business with parents. So I've got two different hats on right now.
Okay.
My job as a speech pathologist, my license is birth to 21. So I get who comes.
Okay.
And when I do this program, the language of play business, I am teaching parents what they can do at home.
And
So,
those are probably younger kids,
and
right?
those are typically parents of kids 1 to 7.
1 to 7. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So some great things to do with kids in that age range would be to play a lot of games, and you can totally make these games up. It doesn't have to be anything formal, but you're playing games that get the kids thinking about what are the sounds in the word. Really, ultimately, we want them to pull that word apart. We want them to focus on the fact that, oh gosh, my mouth is changing to produce these different sounds. And oh, what's the first sound in that word? And can I pull it off? So you could play simple games like, tell me everything that you can think of that starts with B. And these are great games to play, for example, if you're in the car. You're
Mm-hmm.
driving along, look outside, tell me everything you can think of or everything that you can see that starts with a B or with an or with an ol. And by doing that, you're getting the child to focus on the fact that, first of all, words have different sounds. Okay, what is the first sound in a particular word? And now can I find other words or can I think of other words that all start with that same sound? And you're having them pull those words apart into, at the very least in this example, the beginning sound and then the rest of the word. Developmentally, that's the first piece that kids figure out. Oh, that word has a beginning sound, and I can pull that sound apart. Once they can do that easily, then you could play the same kind of game with pulling away the last sound in the word. So if your word is cat, what's the last sound in cat? It's that t. Exactly. Now, can you think of other words that have a t as their final sound? So those are some. Other good things to do are anything to do with rhyming, because again, with rhyming, you're pulling apart, you're taking off that first part of the word, but you're keeping the end of the word. So back to those phonological skills, you're
Mm-hmm.
teaching them that these words can be broken apart. So anything you can do with rhyming, playing rhyming games, reading lots of books that have rhymes. So Dr. Seuss books, for example, or Mother Goose nursery rhymes, like anything to focus on rhyming. And read them over and over and over again. If your child is willing to listen to that, a nursery rhyme 5,000 times, then read it to them or tell it to them 5,000 times. It
Mm-hmm.
is really, really good for them to hear all that repetition. It helps them get strength in understanding how rhyming works and that you can take away that first sound and swap in a different sound. Those are some great ones. There's another thing we call the post-it game, where we have post-its and we have the students, usually two different color post-its, so consonants maybe on yellow square 3 by 3 inch post-its, and then maybe vowels on pink post-its. And if you just use the basic consonants that they already know, you can have them start to build words before they can even write. So you could write on the post-it, you could write maybe an S on the yellow post-its. Maybe you'd write an S and a T and an L and an M and an N, whichever ones they know. Start with whatever they know. And then on the pink post-its, you write some vowel sounds. Ah, eh, I. Again, whichever letters they might know already. And then you have them write the word with a post-it.
Sure,
And
by
so
putting the
you
post-its in order, like
by putting
magnetic
the post-its
letters.
in order. Exactly.
Yeah.
So write the word sit with your post-its. Okay, now take sit, and can you change that to lit? What would you
Mhm.
have to do to change sit to lit? And then so on and so forth. So again, you start with swapping out the first sound, sit, lit, mit, fit, bit, again, whatever consonants they know. Then you do it with the last sound. And then eventually when they can do it with the last sound, then you start manipulating that vowel in the middle. And you can go sit, sat. You can do it with nonsense words.
Mhm.
You can add a fourth sound. If you add an S, you can go from lit to slit or lits.
Mhm.
Again, they can be nonsense words. They don't have to be real words. Um, yeah, so the post-it game is another really great one.
I love it. Those are real practical strategies that parents can actually do at home, that you don't need to have a whole lot of knowledge of the jargon or the
That's right.
procedures, the strategies, but yet you are actually doing it when you put those sticky notes or magnetic letters on the fridge and you can move those sounds around and only give them the ones that they know. I love that because then you're building in success right away. This is so good. I think that families are going to be able to do that. If you were to think of one thing, like you have a huge toolbox of things that you would do, and even now, as you were telling parents some really good things to do, if you were to choose one thing that you would like to say, start here, moms and dads, and let's say the child's 5, kindergarten, and really isn't knowing much yet, what would you advise parents do in those early ages?
I would do those word games. I would do it with whether it's with post-its or whether you're in the car and saying, tell me all the things you can think of that start with B. Focus on that. And I would say leave the phonics for later. Kids need to have a really strong basis in those phonological skills. So in being able to manipulate the sounds and the letters. So I think it's much more important to be working with kids on those kinds of games of taking the words apart and putting them back together again. That I think is much more important than trying to get your kids to read Bob books, for example, and trying to teach them the sounds of the different letters and how to write the different letters. The phonological piece is really strong and it's a really important foundational skill. And if you skip that skill and go straight to the phonics and teaching them the sounds of the letters, but they don't have that understanding of how it works about the letters and the sounds, it's going to be much more difficult for them to learn. So my one piece of advice would be don't worry about the letters so much, just focus on the sounds, focus on manipulating those sounds, focus on taking words and pulling them apart, swapping something out and putting it back together again. That's where I think the focus should be with the young kids, with the 5-year-olds and the 4-year-olds.
I love that. And I 100% agree. And I know that that is also research based.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Everything that you've said today has been founded in research. So I love that you are spot on and how I absolutely agree. And I think that you were very articulate to be able to explain it. So thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. It's wonderful talking to you about all this stuff.
I can see your passion. I can see your love with it. All right. Before I actually let you go, I would like to open up the label of specific learning disability because you do work in special education with kiddos that have a diagnosis of specific learning disability in the area of reading. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Right. So explain that label, please, to parents.
It's an excellent question. There's a lot of confusion around it.
Mm-hmm.
Specific learning disability in the area of reading, which is what a lot of schools will diagnose students with,
Mm-hmm.
is just another way of saying dyslexia. And
Okay.
what's happening is that the schools are not wanting to use the word dyslexia because they're worried parents are going to get really upset. Parents are going to freak out. We don't want to say this word. And so rather than saying to the parents, your student has dyslexia, they're saying to the parents instead, your student has a specific learning disability in the area of reading. If it also includes spelling, which it always does, the more accurate terminology might be to say they have dyslexia and dysgraphia, or specific learning disabilities in the area of reading and writing, because those things go hand in hand. Um, but a lot of schools, like I said, they don't want to do it. I think they're worried about parents. Honestly, I think it does a bit of a disservice to parents because if you don't realize what it means and you don't realize that your
Mm-hmm.
school is telling you your child has dyslexia, you've just lost the ability or you never gained the ability to go out and Google it and learn as much as you possibly can about
Yes.
dyslexia. So I wish schools used I'm going to say the right terminology, but I wish they used the other terminology. I wish they told parents, and use the words dyslexic and dysgraphic, dyslexia, dysgraphia. I think that would be better all around. But not everyone's doing it.
Right. And that is largely because the Department of Education within a state has decided what terminology is going to be used.
Yes, although at the federal level, they've also said, no, 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 you can go ahead and use the
Oh,
words dyslexia. So my
oh,
understanding is
okay.
that no, they're actually allowed to, because
Okay.
there was so much confusion around it, because so many schools were using the specific learning disability language. I think the feds actually came out with, instructions that no, 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 schools, it's okay. You can go ahead and use the words dyslexia and dysgraphia, but the
Good.
schools just want to do it. They haven't taken them up on it, or not all schools have taken them up on it.
So, Daniela, thank you for having all this information. And if a parent wanted to get a hold of you, how would they be able to?
Best place to find me is on our website. It is kidsupreadingtutors.com. So kidsupreadingtutors.com. If you go there, you'll see some buttons that say contact us. That will end up in my email. And if you hit the button, schedule a call, you'll end up on my calendar and be able to set up a meeting with me.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much.
It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. I really enjoy this. I love talking to people who know about this stuff, who love talking
Mhm.
about it. I love working with the kids. It's all just wonderful.
Okay, and listeners, I have a list of her contact information that you will find in the show notes. So don't hesitate, just go there. And thank you for being here on The Language of Play.
Thank you for having me.
Hey parents, I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who also lives or works with children? I would really appreciate it if you would leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. I read every review and it lights me up to know that this show is making a difference. Then come join my Facebook community, where you'll meet other parents who are dedicated to helping their children grow too. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me. Now it's time to go. Let's pop our kiddos in the strollers and go look around outdoors and see what we have to talk about.